For any team in college football, for them to be good, a lot of things need to go right. Let's talk about what the Wolverines need to do this upcoming season to be an incredible team. We're going to do so right here on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Tuesday. Yes, it is Tuesday. Thank you a lot. Memorial Day weekend. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. And thank you to all of our everydayers who watch our show every single day. And thank you for making us part of your first listen. I wrote up on Wolverines Wire a bunch of different questions that I have about this Michigan football team entering the 2025 season. I think that's a good primer to kind of get into the idea of what do the Wolverines need to do if they're going to be a college football playoff type of team. So we're going to use that in segment 1 and 2. In segment 3, we're going to talk a little bit about Dusty May and company being able to secure the rights to Yaxel Lendeborg, who withdrew from the NBA draft. Super exciting stuff. So let's start off with different questions. I'm actually not going to pay attention to the Wolverines Wire thing that I wrote. We're just going to kind of move on and just kind of come up with some of these. I mean, it's probably going to be about the same because, I mean, I did write the story after all, right? So let's discuss a bit of what Michigan needs to do, or basically the questions that I have. First and foremost, obviously, the biggest question I have is offensive related, right? Like, how is this offense going to look? What is it going to be? Because the Wolverines really need for that to work, right? Because it just was not complimentary football. We've spent a lot of time in the last week discussing complimentary football, the importance of all that kind of stuff, because that's how Michigan is built, right? Like, if you look at a lot of other teams, you look at, Ohio State obviously is an offensive built team. Now, defensively, they got a heck of a lot better and they won a championship. And that's how that's going to go for a lot of teams, right? They're elite on one side and you need to be good enough. And they were more than good enough defensively, right? They had, I think, the top defense in the country or near it, right? So, but Michigan is particularly reliant on, we're going to have an extremely strong defense, and we're going to have, because we have a ball control offense, good luck when it comes to being able to do certain things against that offense, right? Or that defense, because we're going to keep the control of the ball for so long that it's just not going to. And I'm just watching my crane just like struggling to get out of the top position. Clearly, I can't schedule it that way. For those watching, I have an automated crane that's running one of the cameras. And you set it at certain positions and you hit go, and then it just goes and does its own thing. When I say crane, it's like a jib arm. It's what creates all this movement and everything. I don't think I did the greatest job of programming it. We have to, eventually we'll find its level here. But anyway, I digress. But I think that they, you look at a lot of teams, they have certain aspects of them that are elite. Michigan relies heavily on having that elite defense and then just doing enough offensively and just basically putting their foot on your throat, right? So what is the offense going to look like? Because we have a lot of questions that have come through, right? You got like Semaj Morgan out there saying it's not traditional. You've got Donaven McCulley saying it's fast paced. And then yet you hear a lot of other people say like, well, it's still going to be Michigan football. So to some degree, it's like, what is it? What does it end up looking like in that light? Because you can have a little bit of that change. And like, I'm going to bet that is going to look relatively similar. Just more downfield passing. Like, think like the height of the JJ McCarthy. I mean, yeah, there will be some different schematic differences. But I mean, just in terms of philosophy, what's it going to look like? And obviously, you're going to rely heavily on Bryce Underwood and the new running backs and all of that, which is where I thought it was kind of funny. You had the Athlon thing with the coaches being like, well, everyone talks about Bryce Underwood. No one's really talking about their running backs. Not in a sense of like, no one's talking about Justice Haynes and Jordan Marshall. It's more of like, Oh, they need more than just a quarterback. They need some running. Oh, okay, that's been addressed. Pay attention. You know? So, I mean, number one is that offensively. And there's a lot of different questions. And we'll kind of unpack some of this offense defense. I think that's how we're going to do it today. Instead of just me going through the list of everything, offensively, what other questions do I have? I think the big thing is what wide receivers are going to step up, right? They need wide receivers to step up. Now, you hear a lot about Donaven McCulley and what he's been able to do and what he should be capable of and all of that. And I think that that's super enticing to have a 6'5" guy that's got experience that can come in and be that difference maker through the air, getting those contested catches, doing all that kind of stuff. I think that's good and well. They're going to need more than him. And that's where I am intrigued by some of the other guys they have, whether it is Semaj Morgan, who we had on the show with an exclusive where he's sitting there saying like he's putting Kirk Campbell on blast, right? Which was fun. That was fun for me, at least. Hopefully it was fun for you guys. So you have a little bit of that. But you also, you want to see, like, can he live up to what he's saying, where he's saying he's a route tactician? Can some of these other guys, like Fredrick Moore, we saw the glimpses. He finally got his first career touchdown in the ReliaQuest Bowl. And I love his little dance that he did. I did a poor job. I got coffee here and I'm wearing white. I don't exactly want to go nuts here. But that makes you wonder, like, can one of those guys, or can it be Jamar Browder, who was the hype beast of spring ball? Can it be Andrew Marsh, who everyone's super excited about? Can it be Channing Goodwin, who was the most targeted wide receiver in the entire spring game? Granted, only came down with 3 catches on, I think, 11 targets. So, like, some of these guys are going to have to step up. I mean, it could be Jacob Washington. That's the fun thing, is like, he's a 6'4" guy, comes from a good high school in Archbishop Shaw out of Louisiana. He absolutely could come in and be a factor. Sometimes you see that, like, as much as you want to sit there and think, well, it's going to be one of the early enrollees. I remember in 2016 thinking that with some of the guys that they had. And then it ended up being Chris Evans, the one guy who didn't enroll early, that ended up seeing, like, he had a breakout game right out of the gate. So you kind of just don't know. So that'll be interesting in and of itself, just to see who those guys are. And to that degree, like, this was one of the questions I had. Who are going to be just the general guys who step up just in, anyway? There's almost always a surprise player that no one's really counting on. And I think back to even like like some of the guys that you feel were liabilities at one point, like I remember being a relatively, when I say young Michigan football fan, I wasn't young age-wise, but young in terms of, like, I'm paying close attention. And it felt like, I know he still gets a ton of hate, but, like, Sean Crable made a big step from 2006 to 2007, right? Like, down the road, like guys like Stevie Brown, or you think of, like, a Jeremy Gallen, like at points where you're just like, I don't know if I want that guy on the field. And kind of more recently, I mean, you look at Kalel Mullings, right? Kalel Mullings, a few short years ago, there were people that were commenting on this very podcast that were all over the Twitter. And I know I like saying it like that, all over the Twitter, who absolutely didn't want to see Kalel Mullings carry a football for Michigan ever again. They wanted that experiment done. They were, after the Fiesta Bowl, they're like, we're done. And then not too long later, you're like, well, we kind of need him. Like, he's kind of the best running back. And we love him, by the way, as well. Right? If a lot of armchair coaches got their wishes, Kalel Mullings never would have had the big carry he had against Ohio State to essentially win the football game. Shows you how things can change. All right, we've got more questions, and I'm going to continue along this line of thought as far as getting into what Michigan needs. But I want to continue with the players who are going to step up year over year, and then after that we're going to talk a little bit about Yaxel Lendeborg. Lendeborg. I'm going to really struggle with the name. We'll talk about him, then Dusty May being able to retain him in the transfer portal class. We'll get to that here in just a moment. But before we do, ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all of my money go between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment? It's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. When I first started using Monarch Money, I realized just how much I am spending on food delivery. And guess what? Because of that, I budget smarter and I save a heck of a lot more at this point. Instead of just managing your money, you can juggle all of these multiple apps and all of that. You can use Monarch to check your finances. You can do a little bit of everything, track spending, and even plan your long-term goals. So take control of your finances now with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. LOCKEDONCollege is the code, and you can have half off your first year. I didn't let Zuri into the room. Sorry, Jimmy Whitner. I can hear her shaking out, like not shaking, but like she's such a codependent dog. She wants to come back in the room so bad. Also, we're still trying to figure out the 3-camera setup here. It's going to be continued challenges. Trying to make sure that that I have everything in sync. We only used one shot from camera 3 that was behind me, and now we're back to this. So again, just trying to upgrade for you, the people. Anyhow. All right, let's keep into this line of thinking. Who are these players who can step up now, right? Because that's a big part of what any team is guys improving year over year. Like last year, I mean, Kalel was obviously kind of it, but then you had Ike Iwana, you had a true freshman, Mason Curtis, Brandon Hillman stepped it up, obviously Jair Hill. So like you have to, see guys go from not really playing a lot to being players, right? Zeke Berry, was a guy that went from not really playing to playing. There's just all kinds of guys that can be a part of that. So who this year I think is going to be the big question. Some of them are going to be transfers that obviously we just hadn't seen or heard of, like Trey Williams and Damon Payne, and the Metcalf brothers. I think absolutely could be guys, but I think like you wonder, can it be one of the guys who was a star in the spring game? Now I cautioned against like getting too into the idea of the spring game players, and because we've seen Peyton O'Leary come out and have a 100+ yard game and a couple touchdowns, and you're like, whoa, where'd this guy come from? Benjamin Hall the following year, right? Like you just kind of don't know. But it would be nice to see like if a Bryson Cuzdall or a Jalen Hoffman can be a guy that steps up. I would not be surprised if Jalen Hoffman is that guy, because we saw so many of the pictures coming out of spring in videos. Jalen Hoffman was a constant recipient of the football. So it absolutely could be him. But we'll see. I mean, there's all kinds of different players that could be that guy. That could be that dude. All right. What other questions we have? Let's move over to the defensive side of the ball and kind of park there for a few minutes before we get into the Yaxel stuff. I think the big thing for this Michigan defense is that it starts quickly, right? And when I say starts quickly, I don't just mean on a game per game basis. Like it needs to assert itself pretty. Like I think that we came looking at the season opener in 2024 and said, okay, Fresno State, that's good. But then again, at the end of the season, you could see, or not season, at the end of the game, you were able to see Fresno State kind of move the football somewhat uncomfortably, considering at that point it was 23 to 10. You felt a little uncomfortable until that pick six from current Michigan quarterback Mikey Keene to former Michigan cornerback Will Johnson. Like that didn't feel good, right? Like you want to be able to feel like, all right, the defense is going to hold strong immediately. You want to kind of be back to where you're disappointed in the season opener against an also-ran. Now, Fresno State wasn't that, but you're seeing against an also-ran, and you're like, okay, I'm really disappointed. They let up a field goal as time expired. What the heck? You're right. Like you want the defense to start faster in that light. And here's the sweet spot sitting. There we go. Pulling the pillow up a little. Again, I'm learning, and you're just getting my live reaction. New chair, new everything. So I think that would be a big thing, is just to be able to start earlier in terms of and they're going to have similar issues facing Oklahoma in week 2, just like Texas, and it's on the road. They're just going to have to start faster in terms of being able to get out there and just shut down an opposing offense. I think that's going to be somewhat difficult this year, because even though I probably would have said that last year, it's like, okay, they're facing Mikey Keene, Quinn Ewers, Miller Moss, Max Brosmer actually had a really good game against Michigan. But Washington obviously had a good pass game, yada, yada, yada. I think it's a little bit different this year, but the same, because you're not going to really have to worry about weeks 1 and 3, but you do have to worry about week 2 against John Mateer. You do have to worry about week 4 against Dylan Raiola. So it's somewhat still similar in that they're going to have to find that extra gear relatively early, because it's just going to be challenging given some of the teams that they face. They still face USC in week 7, game 6. So they're going to have to figure out how to be dominant early. And that leads to the last part that I'm going to kind of get to on this show, which is that they got to figure out the secondary. And I think when I say secondary, I mean cornerbacks in particular, because I think they're going to be great at safety. I think that they have a ton of potential at corner. I mean, there's potentially 4 deep that you can look at and say, great. But Zeke Berry has only got 5 games in as a cornerback, right? Like the whole month of November and one bowl game, right? So is that going to be a consistent thing that Zeke Berry is just this absolute incredible cornerback? He was playing opposite Amir Hall for a lot of that, and Amir Hall was very good. And can Jair Hill be consistent? Can Shamari Earls end up being the second coming of Will Johnson? Is Josiah Edmond ready for primetime? And is the maturity of the group ready for that next step? I think that's the next big thing. Is we don't know how mature they are in general, right? Like Zeke Berry, I feel like has that leadership potential, but outside of that, it's a lot of youth. And I will just be curious to see how that ends up working out. All right, we're going to continue on. Let's talk a little Yaxel Lendeborg. Now I can say it now that I'm not including it in the first segment here. Let's talk about him deciding to withdraw from the NBA draft. Let's do that here in just a moment. Kind of funny because just changing the way that we do the show makes me feel more scatterbrained, even though nothing's changed, right? Like I know what my show plan is. I still have everything up on a TV over here, but just sitting in a different position, even though we've done shows where we're sitting, we did poolside shows. We've done, whether it was in the ReliaQuest Bowl, we did some for the Rose Bowl, right? Like it's just changing. It's like I'm like a horse. I get jarred by change. If you didn't know, horses they freak out when things change. All right. So, huge news for Michigan basketball, that with Yaxel Lendeborg opting to withdraw from the NBA draft. And it's massive because not only is he the number 1 transfer portal player, I think that there are a lot of people out there, and Michigan fans, if you're watching this, obviously you were hopeful, but I don't know that you were optimistic necessarily that he was going to stay in, right? Especially when he's sitting there saying it's 50-50 and you're weighing I understand you love Michigan basketball. He is new to that, right? So it's okay, which is he going to do? What's his decision? Is he going to end up, staying in college when, and it's okay, he wants a guaranteed contract. Is he going to get that guaranteed contract? When does he know? How does he know, when it's, at what point, was he aware? Now, we don't have to live in that world where we're saying whatever, because now we know he is in fact going to be playing basketball for Michigan. That's huge. That's great. And what that does for Dusty May is give you not only an incredible transfer portal haul in general. I mean, it was already going to be good. Let's say it would have stuck with just Elliot Cadeau, Morez Johnson, and Ade Mara, especially bringing in Winters Grady, Trey McKinney. I think that they would have been in a really good spot as far as that's concerned. But having Yaxel, having a veritable superstar especially after losing the duo of Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden. I think that now you look at it and you're like, okay, they've got a lot of depth and a lot of versatility. And you can kind of roll with so many different guys. And I think one of the more important parts of all of it is that you're looking at it and you're saying, okay, at this point, you actually have a really deep bench, which isn't always the case, because now, like, you look at what they brought in. I mean, Yaxel's obviously a starter. Elliott's obviously a starter. I mean, all of them are starters. Ade Mara, is a starting caliber center, but you probably aren't even starting him, right? He's probably a bench guy. So, and you still have Roddy Gale, who really came on late. Namari Burnett entering his third year as a Wolverine. LJ Kaysen feels like he's kind of ready to emerge. All of a sudden you have so much depth. Will Shetter being back? Like, one of the problems that Michigan basketball has had for a long time is depth. And when you think back to the last time they made the Final Four under John Beilein, they had incredible depth, right? Like, it was kind of like, okay, you've got the starters. You had Duncan Robinson coming off the bench. Now, granted, that was kind of what helped him kind of reach that next level, because he was struggling as a starter, and then he comes off the bench and he's sixth man of the year. I think that shows you, though, like what you absolutely need some depth. Sometimes you can have a couple star players all playing together and that can work out. I feel like it's always going to be much more of a benefit when it's like, all right, we're going to sub guys out, but we're not going to really lose anything because we're going to bring in, other players that can absolutely just dominate, right? The fact that you're probably bringing Ade Mara in as a center off the bench is huge, right? Like, they've got all kinds of players at every level, and having Yaxel come in, somewhat lead that charge as a forward and be that star player that Michigan hasn't really had in a long time. I mean, that's massive. And the great thing about that too is number one, Yaxel's probably going to rise up the NBA draft boards, and Michigan's going to have a higher end draft pick, and it's going to be more discussion about Dusty May as a developer of talent, even though he was already that guy, right? I mean, you're going to see that a little bit here in a month or so, when a couple weeks or so, with Danny Wolf, because Danny Wolf was not considered a first round guy, and now he certainly is. So you're going to have that. And what that's going to do is that's just going to continue to help Michigan in the basketball program to be that type of team that players want to go play at, right? Because it's weird for being a basketball team that has had a lot of success in the last 15-ish years. It's not necessarily a destination. And now, I don't mean that as a bad thing, right? Like, it just isn't, because, and you can see that with some down years. And I think that having a guy like, because I think this was a little bit of the discussion when Juwan Howard came, is suddenly you're going to start seeing more, less of the developmental type of recruits and more of those 5 stars. I think that you can kind of have the best of both worlds of what you expected and hoped from Juwan Howard, as well as what you had with John Beilein. That's kind of what it feels like. So I think that speaks a lot to what the future can be in Ann Arbor. So I'm just kind of extrapolating some of the Yaxel Lendeborg stuff. I can't, I'm not going to try to sit here and evaluate his game. It's not at all my deal. But I think that there's a lot to be excited about, and I think it makes it so that you can look at what this season should be, and the expectation should be, winning the Big Ten, making a deep playoff run, maybe even making a Final Four and beyond. Like, this absolutely has the potential to be a national championship type of team. So that's exciting. All right, that's going to do it for us today. So anyway, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, especially as we continue to work out. Like, I know we're upgrading things, but we're working out the kinks of the technology changes and everything, and the framings of things and what have you. So anyway, that'll do it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you again soon. Peace.